Borealum. It may never be known what first awakened the cold legions of the Necron from their vast burial vaults in the southern coast of Kaurava III. Archives suggest that Imperial Guard survey crews may have been dispatched to coastal Emosa several months before the conflict. Others point to the strange and unknown influence of the warp storm, which could somehow have roused the deathless Necrons from their slumber. Out of the dry Emosan sands, an ancient complex emerged. Part burial ground, part power plant, part staging ground. As builder scarabs removed sands and restored structures to power, its clean-cut, symmetrical, and lifeless form emerged. It pulsed with the green glow of the strange power which fuels the Necrons. Vast reserves of it. Enough to drive an endless stream of monoliths and Necron soldiers. Anyone foolish enough to assail this unearthed necropolis would do well to heed that flow of energy. It is the source of the Necron's power, and if unchecked, there is little limit to what strength Necrons could marshal against their foes.
So, they come. Awake. I give you energy. Drink of it, and awake. Find camp. Destroy. My monolith scarabs have come. Good. Now we build me a monolith here. They shall meet their ends. They shall join the army of death.
It was the Necron threat that had originally brought them to the Kaurava system. There could be no greater satisfaction to Boreale than to lead his troops to victory against them, just as the Blood Ravens had in the conflict over Cronus. Although it was in a different system, the Blood Ravens had not forgotten the dark and bloody wars between the Imperium and the Necrons. The famed soldiers of the Blood Ravens chapter were no strangers to the dread Necron legions. However, unlike the vast underground labyrinth they had fought on Cronus, the Space Marines here found a vast and terrible city buried in the sands of the Emosan coast. Vast energy conduits pulsed beneath their feet, feeding power to a host of monoliths and a cold, lifeless army. The Blood Ravens believed that they had learned a great deal with regard to the Necrons in the War of Cronus. It was therefore with some dismay that Commander Boreale found the deathless and unreasoning foe headquartered in an entire city, half exhumed from beneath the Emosan sands. His Marines had shown themselves capable of dispatching the slow-moving legions from a distance. But who could say what new forms of the enemy lurked in this strange necropolis? The sight of a Necron city half uncovered from beneath the Emosan sands conjured for each and every Space Marine the enormous monstrosity of their foe. Defeat was unacceptable. Such a thing could not be permitted within the reach of the Imperium. Had the 252nd Conservator Regiment ever taken their census and survey duty seriously, the ancient Necron stronghold of Kaurava III would probably have been awakened hundreds of years prior to the Kaurava conflict. Whether their failure to keep any presence on this wasteland planet was remarkable luck or dismal negligence is now debated heavily by Imperial historians. As far as General Stubbs was concerned, the Necrons were no more than a vast army of little mechs. The fiendish machines made poor victims for the Imperial Guard. They were always armed, and although their frames did encase souls, those were feeble and sour, and could not be tortured before reaping. Defeating the Necrons was a necessary and grim task. In truth, the Necrons and the Guardsmen have little in common other than their enemies. Where one is a cold and silent army of death and dominion, the other revels in wild noise and action. When the 252nd Conservator Regiment found themselves standing above the cold necropolis that had emerged from the Emosan sands, they saw not just a foe, but the one thing which they feared and abhorred: subservience, silence, the void. True enough, some of General Stubbs' men seemed a bit unnerved by the dark metal battalions that massed like a lake at the base of the exhumed necropolis on the Emosan coast. But General Vance Stubbs simply made sure that they were more frightened by him, and they fought good enough.
General Stubbs, Field Command and Tech Priest have been deployed and are ready for active duty.
I see. Are we ready to dispatch a Baneblade?
No, sir, no. 4 monoliths have been sighted. It looks as though they're being powered up.
We'll have to put a stop to that. We can't have 4 of those things bearing down on us. There must be some way to cut off their energy supply. I wonder what happens if we torch it.
Sir, the monoliths are gaining power. We've determined that power is flown to each of the outer monoliths from some core at the back of the city. Destroying that might stop the flow of power.
If we go in there now, we risk the outer monoliths being fully restored. That might be more than we can handle.
An ambush!
We bring death to the mad guards. Kill them.
General Stubbs, the Xeno Handbook identifies these leaders as primary targets.
Let's see if we can take it out. Hit it with all you've got, men.
I see you, little spotter. Do not aim your guns at me.
Invigorated under the capable command of General Stubbs, the Imperial Guard showed their best face, and everything that the ancient exhumed necropolis set against them were beaten back with ample munitions, perseverance, and heavy armor. The battle between the Necrons and the Imperial Guard soldiers, although both were undoubtedly evil, was in many ways a struggle of life versus death. For the Imperial Guard were devotees of life, feasting on its vibrancies and its excesses. The Necrons, for their part, stood only for death and cold brute power. Fortunately for the 252nd, the weapons of the Imperium were not lost on the unfeeling, metal-bodied Necron army. Although he'd had his doubts, the victory over the Necrons was as good a proof as any, in Stubbs' eyes, that the 252nd Regiment were worth their general. They had a tough time of it, descending into the bowl of death among the hot sands. But as Stubbs figured these things, Guardsmen were for fighting, and there was nothing better than a good, hard fight so long as you won.
Beware those scams until we are more flying things. Destroy air factories. They came from nearby. Crush them there. Find air factories. Destroy them. I see their lord. Kill him.
Sir, reconnaissance had identified 4 monoliths at the perimeter of the target area. They appear to be drawing power from the center. I don't know what for.
Excellent work. That area is supplying power that is used to upgrade their capabilities. It is mission critical that we prevent these monoliths from being fully restored, which means we will need to cut off their power.
Commander, sensors have identified power flow from the central base to the 4 outer monoliths. There's a point at each path, just outside the center. If we hold it, we can turn the power off.
Trapped. Enter the spider's web. Predator tanks, stay out of my way, or I will destroy you all.
The Blood Ravens, who piously hold all forms of alien life in disdain, treated the Necron threat with the greatest disgust possible. Ultimately, this revulsion at the Necrons must have fueled the Blood Ravens' passion in the heat of battle and brought them to their righteous victory. The Space Marines' fury fully overwhelmed the Necrons.
Find and destroy mech shops. Stop tanks. Let there be no more. Destroy manufactorums. Destroy the transport factories. Need power. Get power. Take it back. Not yet. Drink again. Grow. We are many. Good. Our foes are there. Destroy them.
Commander, our scanners show that this defensive force originated at the summoning core at the back of the compound. Dispatching the core should prevent similar defensive teleports.
Our first priority is those 4 outer monoliths that are powering up. Hitting the center could lose us the battle.
You shall not go here. Go back.
The monoliths are powering up.
It's gone active. Marines, your objective is that giant tower of death.
Die, trespassers.
As they killed each other on the field of battle, did either side remember that once they had also been mortal enemies at war? Perhaps this memory deepened the bitter despair of the Necrons as they fought and died. Perhaps there was a gloating air of vengeance to the Space Marines as they crushed them. Although they took less joy in the endeavor, the Blood Ravens fought with no less ferocity. They danced and fired before their deathless foes with vicious abandon. The Necron legions could not stop them, and neither could the threat of the great monoliths. They did succeed in subduing the Necrons, and their duty was fulfilled.
Awaken, and destroy. It is restored. Now it will vanquish Great Deceiver. Lead them to their deaths. Death blooms and flies out to kill. Now they die.
Commander, scouts have located small Necron outposts to the south and northwest. They have got sufficient strength to threaten our base.
We follow. There is no escape. It is complete. Now you will die.
The Necrons approach. Ready yourself, Blood Ravens.
You think you have won. You have not.
Commander Boreale had been ready for all this. What he had not counted on was having to face a manifestation of the Catan god, the Great Deceiver. A Space Marine's highest hope was martyrdom in his Emperor's name. But the fingers of a cold, lifeless hand were suddenly clamped around his arm. His soul had not yet left his body, and now it was destined for a more terrible fate than death. He would never join the God Emperor.
Embrace death. You cannot escape it.
No, we have failed. The Emperor.
All energy, I command it. Die.
In his last moments of life, Force Commander Boreale suddenly understood the full extent of his error. He had completely underestimated the threat of the Necron horde. With terrifying force, they had poured across the borders of the lands of solitude, slaughtering all in their path. As the last flicker of consciousness was dissipating from his clouded eyes, the great Space Marine reviewed all that had passed, and saw that by the time his scouts had spied the Necrons through their scopes, his defeat was already inevitable. The Space Marines must revise their protocols. Segmentum must be warned. And with that single thought, Boreale tried to rise.
We shall not die. No, it is the enemy who will taste death and defeat. Fire the orbital bombardment, immediately!
Sir, they're right on top of us. The collateral!
Fire! We are Space Marines. If we are to die, our enemies will die beside us.
A blood raven is trained from an early age to cleave to truth, to observe the greatest discipline, and to accept all threats with calm reserve. This ancient menace could not keep the blood ravens from victory. Even the manifestation of one of their Catan gods, the Deceiver, could not salvage them from the purging fire that always goes before the triumphant Space Marines, burning alien, heretic, and mutant alike.
I see now. You have hidden power. Find a way there. Beware the shrine. Demons will come from there. They shall not stop here. They must die. Power slipping, released, free.
Even the ancient god, the great Deceiver, could not cause their rout. As his forces spread over the necropolis of Emosa, exterminating every last stray Necron warrior, he felt a great peace come over his soul. The future grew clear, and he saw the lifting of a great cloud from the place. The glory and renown that Commander Boreale's forces had won that day was great indeed. The Necrons had been allowed to nearly complete the process of exhuming their city of death. They had even summoned a manifestation of the hated and reviled Catan god, the Deceiver, to their aid, and all in vain. Truly, the battle this day was every bit as great as that of yore. In the Battle of Emosa, the powers of the God Emperor proved themselves in every way superior to the older Catan gods of death. Even when one of these gods, the Great Deceiver, was summoned to fight in corporeal form against his blood ravens. Their deeds that day would be scribed and illuminated in the Imperium histories for perpetuity. Afterwards, the Space Marines spent several days combing the sands of Emosa, destroying every last Necron, before leaving the area to General Vance Stubbs' special demolition crews. Indrick Boreale trusted no other force to keep vigil over the ancient and deathless Necrons, and be watching still a millennium hence. Taking a lesson from the Cronus War, every suspicious stretch of the coast was repeatedly detonated to ensure against further Necron awakenings. And yet he knew this enemy far too well. Boreale knew the Necrons could never permanently be defeated. A warlike vigil must be kept, and peace brought to bear at any cost, so that the deathless ones should sleep long and undisturbed. Indeed, the wise teachings of the Imperium were tried and proved on this day. Not even the appearance of the great deceiver, summoned into corporeal form, could avert the Blood Raven's victory. Following the traditional victory ceremonies, General Vance Stubbs oversaw the careful destruction and sealing of the Necron city before the Sea of Sand was returned to cover it. Some of the enemy's heretical technology was sent to the Ordo Xeno for study, and much of the rest was dutifully destroyed. Adapting the example set in the War of Cronus, General Vance Stubbs had cargo loads of bombs shipped to the Emosan Plains, and every inch of possible Necron catacomb was subject to multiple detonations. The 252nd Regiment would seal the many crypts, and afterwards bury the foul city in sands once again. By the time they were done, nothing was left of the ancient Necron city. All had been toppled, shattered, and smashed to dust. Following the victory, Stubbs forbade any future Imperial surveys of Kaurava III. Alas, no celebrations followed. They took no slaves and pillaged no goods. Their duty done, General Stubbs' forces fled the place in search of foes who could bleed and plead and cry out in pain.